Hello. This week we're going to be looking at the outsides of the buildings. This is going to be quite a long process because I've got to build it up in slowly in colours. So I want to get cracking on with it. As you can see, I brought in my Carentan Normandy that I did some time back, and that's just basically, although the colours are not going to be identical, I've brought it in because I want it to largely match. And most of the buildings I saw when I went on my trip to Normandy, they all tended to be this soft, light sandstone colour. So I'm going to do variants of that, but I just want to make sure that ultimately all the buildings that I'm building will kind of blend together, So I've just brought that in as a reference piece. But the first thing I'm going to do is I found this colour. It's I don't know what you call it. Titanio Crudo, unbleached titanium. Not quite sure what the colour is on that, but that's the stuff that I'm using. But as you can see, the colour is not unlike what I'm looking for. It's probably a little bit darker, but I might start with this because then I can give it a dry brush. So I've squirted a little bit of that into my pot. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some of my PVA, if I can get it open. Be fairly generous with it. That's it. And the reason why I'm adding the PVA is because I'm going to add some of this very fine sand, and trust me, this is very, very fine. So it's not going to be in your face as such. Do. Fairly flat brush to start with, and then let's mix all this together. And whether you can see the texture of that very well, but it has got a slight texture to it. But as I say, it's nothing too... I'll probably show it you on the house because then you'll see it better, I think. Alright, so we'll start with this first one. I'm pouring it on fairly smooth. What I'm going to do is obviously when all this is thoroughly dry, I'll then give it a lighter dry brush to give it a bit more texture, and then I can start working in some of the, the blemishes, the dark marks, things like that. As you remember from my last video, there's a few doors that I've not painted, So I'll have to sort them out, but for now I'm going to crack on with this part of it. Right, so there we have it. I'm just going to do the inside here as well on the front bit and the front of the actual shop as well. Right, what I'll do now is, as you can see, I've got quite a lot to go through. I don't want to drag you on the old journey of just seeing me paint this coat on. So I'll jump ahead, get these all up to the same stage, and then I'll bring you back. Right, so as you can see, I've put down that prime coat on all of them parts of the building, except for these two floors from the fourth building, because they've got a slight brick pattern on part of it. So I've tried to mix up a pale brick colour. I don't want it too in your face, so I'm trying to make it a bleached out version of I would want it to be. So it's not, you know, too powerful. That's not too bad. Right. I don't want to overdo this, so I'm trying to make it close to being a dry brush, really. I know I'm going to overlap part of this, it's bound to happen, but if I can keep it tame, I can always go back over some of the bricks I want lighter. Yeah, that's not too bad. Right, what I'm going to do now, I'll clean out my brush and then we'll just give this a couple of minutes, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to touch up the bits that I want lighter. Right, let's just touch up the areas that want back to their base colour. You can see the way that I'm going with this now, and you can see the brightness coming back to it and the contrast between the bricks. So I'm going to carry on doing the rest of this wall and then just tidy these ones up on this side. I'll do the same on the second floor, and then it'll be dry by the time I get to the end of it. So then I'll bring you back and we'll paint in the detailed and there's a more of a brick colour on some of these. Alternatively, you know, if you've ever seen pictures of the real building, you'll see it on there still. Right, I'll get that done and then I'll bring you back. Right, so now that I've touched that up, I'm going to start painting in the darker brick colour for this edging. And what I'm doing is I'm painting the ones that are thinner in this brick or terracotta type colour. And so then it ends up being every alternate one. It's like that. And the same around the window. There we go. It certainly picks it out well. Right, I'll get the other one done off camera and then I'll bring you back and we'll move on to the next stage. So I've completed this bit now. That looks a lot brighter. It's not too in your face mixing with the others, but as I say, the bit that it is, it'll be hidden when we start adding the weathering at the very end. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to quickly paint all the window panes of these false windows on the roof pieces. And what I've tried to do is mix a very pale blue and then mixed it with a pale grey. And I'm going to just, at this stage, just get it on there, try and block out those windows. Obviously, I'll have to come back to them then and then retouch up the white of the window frames. But the important thing is to just get it down there now. So I've actually, got it on. If you like, what I'm trying to say is I work at the bottom and then come back out with the other colours. So because the windows are set back, the window panes are set back, I need to work on them first and then highlight the white of the window. So that's what I'm going to do now. And it just pays really to, do it all at once, because that way you're saving on washing the brush and switching from colour to colour all the time. I mean, I will, when these have done, perhaps put a drizzle of a slightly whiter colour on some of the panes, just to give it that reflective look. But at the minute, I just want to get the colour down onto the windows. So you can't really see a great deal there of what we're actually getting done. But as I say, as we come out and we put the white back in, I may even put a tiny bit of gloss varnish on parts of the window to give it that reflective look. Right, I'll move on to the rest and then I'll bring you back. Right, so the next big job really is to start getting the roof base colour down. And I've mixed with some a tile grey I made myself, and I have added now though a little bit of lighter grey, because although this is going to be dark, I didn't want it as dark as it had been, and this will allow me then to add some lighter touches later. So I'm just going to block this on now on all the roof pieces. I think you can see the difference straight away, which is why I went for that blue undercoat, you know, when I primed them. If you can hear that muffled sound, that's Peggy. I think she's having a little doggy dream. I'm going to touch these edges up with a finer brush. Oh, it's caught a bit there. Yeah, I'm going to catch these edges with a small brush, and then just cover up these that where I've managed to catch it. But yeah, that's looking better. Right, I'll crack on and get the rest of these done, and then I'll bring them back and we'll have a look where we're going next. So as you can see, I've been filling in some of the smaller details on the roofs. You know, so I've focused on putting the white of the window panes, of the window frame, and just touching up the window panes themselves. And then I've just spent a little bit of time after painting the roof, you know, going round any little spillages to make sure that it's all clean and tidy. And then the final thing that I went for was, because some of these I had to give a bit more of a coat to, but then I went on to the chimney pots themselves. So detail wise at the minute, I'm happy with the roofs now. So what I'm going to be turning my attention to next is, I mean, I have to do each building in turn, but is things like this. You know, look, I've not even painted that door. I'm not totally comfortable with the door colouring that I've got on some of these, so I might change that. And then obviously I've got to go for a pavement type colour, you know, as you go through the arches, so the floor base of them, and that'll be the same for all of them. And oh, small details as well, like the drain pipes, I need to get them done. So I'll probably capture a lot of this in a series of photographs, and then I can talk you through it. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to start from the bottom and then go up through each floor. I mean, in actual fact, there's not a lot of detail that I need to add to this. That's okay. But there will be others. I mean, obviously, I've got the drain pipe again, but there will be some that where there's no other little details to pick up on a floor. But that's what I'm going to do, and I'm going to start from the bottom up this time, because I think that'll be the easiest way of managing it. Right, I'll crack on with that, and as I say, I'll capture it in a series of photographs. Here, as you can see, I'm tidying up the window frames, you know, bringing back the white really, and you know, clearing up all the edges where it meets the roof that we've painted, and just basically getting it nice and crisp. And then I turn my attention to the chimney pots, as you've seen,
and basically getting the block colour of the terracotta on before we had the weathering. Next thing was to draw up some grey on the path and on the columns before adding the white dry brushing that I talked about, that just basically takes down the tone a little bit and prepares it for the weathering. Same on the columns here. And then the next thing I wanted to do was add some dark wash to give a shadowed, darker look to the windows. And then I turned my attention to the doors that we talked about. And I've gone for a few different colours as well on these, as well as, you know, some of the internal doors. I think it gives the shops a bit of a brighter appearance, you know, and a bit of variety. Next thing I wanted to do is turn my attention to the drain pipes, and I used a dark grey mixed with some metallic for these. And here they are after I've completed all the smaller details. So what they're waiting for now is just the weathering, really.
Right, so that is all of the fine painting details, the doors and the drain pipe and tidying up that I've had to do. And basically what I want to attempt to do now is on these two I've got an option because obviously I've got a shop name that I've identified from photographs that basically runs across these two buildings. So the first part's on there and then it goes on to this one. Now I'm faced with a couple of things I could have done. I couldn't really use, you know, just a piece of paper that I can glue on because obviously it's not going to match the colours. The other thing I could have tried to do is become a bit of a sign writer and pencil an outline and then try and paint within it. Don't think so. And that really, for that one, I mean, the shop names that I'm going to put underneath, I can print them out on paper. That's no problem. But on these ones, I just don't think it'd have looked right. So basically what I've had to do is turn to something I've just never attempted before. I've never done it. I never even thought that there'd be a paper out that you could do it with. That's how naive I am, really. And that is to make my own decals. Now, I'm not going to say it was particularly hard to actually produce it. A bit more long-winded than I thought it'd be. But I did watch some videos on YouTube about it, and to be honest, a lot of them, particularly as my printer's not brilliant, it's just an inkjet printer, and an old one to boot. Most of the videos I watch seem to be saying, oh yeah, you can do this, but if you do it on an inkjet, it'll be rubbish, it don't work. Now, some of those comments, they're referring to making the decals themselves. But others actually said, you know, they were rubbish when they went on as well. So I've been full of trepidation, really, all the way through this. But anyway, this is what I've produced. So this is on, like, special transfer paper. I don't know whether it gives you the details there, look. Water slide decals. And I basically used a program on my computer to do these because I've seen them on a picture, and I think if you look yourself any photos of that time, you know, obviously early photos, you can see these. You can't make out the writing as such. Some of it I could. Some, even when I could make out the letters, it didn't seem to make sense in French or English. So I actually adapted a couple just so it made sense with what the others did say. And then I used a program, like I say, to just basically curve the writing into the same style that was on the photograph. Now, as you can see, And I think this is where it reflects, you know, what they've been saying, how hard it is. I printed off quite a few copies just in case I mess it up. Because it also said about these decals that they are extremely easy to tear when you're putting them on. A lot easier than the ones that you get with a vehicle, say. Obviously, I haven't got to that stage. You'll see me doing it. But that's why I printed off some, and I also printed some in a red colour because initially I thought, you know, if it's going to be a shop sign, it wants to stand out. But I'm thinking now I might just stick with a grey blue that went for, because that seemed to match. See, none of the photos are in colour, but it did seem to match more what the photo was. So I think I'll leave the red and just stick with that. So this is, I know it's hard to tell, but it's a grey blue, whereas these are just pure black. Right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut out the ones that I want to use, and then what I will do is I'll film it and then probably speed it up, because obviously I'm gonna have to take my time over these, especially if they say they're so terrible, and that way, you know, you won't have to put up with the length of it and you can just see it being done. Right, so let me cut some out that I want, and then I'll bring you back and we'll film it as I try to put these on.
The first thing to say about these when I was putting them on is they're not, you know, as terrible as I'd picked up in videos. So I needn't mince so worried about them, really. Although I've got a confession on this first one. As you can see, it goes across the dividing part of the building. Now, I thought I could run a knife through that. It didn't work out, so I had to use the spare piece on it. And that made it a lot easier. But certainly they weren't as vulnerable as I thought they were going to be. And all I did, you know, when you see me brushing across the model, is I'm just adding a damp brush, really, to make it a little bit easier to move them around when they're in place. And then I went about putting the little middle adverts on in between all the windows. And again, they were pretty good. I mean, apart from the hiccup with the, you know, where the two floors met, they went on relatively easy, to be honest. So I needn't worried about it. And as for the inkjet ones, you know, being rubbish on, I don't think they're too bad. You just got to follow the instructions, you know, for when you're making them.
Right, so I've used some decal fix to go over these once they were dry, and now I've obviously got to let that dry. But in the meanwhile, what I'm doing is I'm putting some of these individual shop names in. I haven't done anything so elaborate with these because you can't really see them very much. But I wanted to put them on, so that's what I've done. But with this one, I've just gone for some paper prints, really, that I'm just sticking in place like that one. Some of them have actually got a nameplate, and where they have, most of them are over there. I've printed shop names out to stick in there already, that will fit inside the plaque. But with this one, it ain't got that, so I've just pasted it on. And put that back on. As I say, once it's in place, you can't really see it unless you really, really look. But it was just one of them things I thought, you know, I'm going to do it, so I did. Right, let's start on the next one. As I say, these transfers are still drying. That's what I meant. Oh, this one, you can actually see the name plaque. And this one, it's the adjoining shop, so it's got the same name on it. But on that one, I had to cut it in two. On this one, I'll be able to cut it as one. I want to get these on early because obviously at the minute the buildings are all looking pretty pristine, and although I probably don't want to go for, you know, the same as, if you have a look at the one that I did before, the Cafta Normandy, that looks pretty, you know, battle drab. I don't want to do it quite as much on these ones because these are right in the town centre. But nevertheless, the need to have, you know, picked up some mud and stains and rain marks and whatever, because they just look unnatural as they are. And I want to do that for all of them at the same time. So this is a, you know, a process I want to get done first. With these, it's much easier, especially with them being so thin. He says, folding it in half, to actually just paint the glue onto the sign and then stick the paper to it. Let's just have a look where it sits first. That's about it. Still quite fiddly, as you can see. There we go. Say, difficult to make out, I know, but the plaques were there, so I thought, you know, they really do need some signs. Right, so that's that one. Right, I'll go through the rest of these and get that done, and then they can be drying overnight, and then we can start the weathering process. Right, I'll be back soon. So now it's time to make them look like they've lived for a bit, and introduce some weathering. And the first one that I'm starting with, we can see that I've started it on this one, look, is this Flores Grime Weathering Wash, which is like a clay and water mix, I believe. And to be honest, one of my best finds from last year. I think it was last year, it might have been the year before. But it's brilliant stuff. I can't recommend it highly enough. The good thing about it is you can put it on, you don't like the look of it, you can just introduce a bit of water and wipe it off. I mean, I started by putting this one on quite thick, and then just a damp brush, and I went over it and cleared a bit of it, and now it looks, you know, how I want it really. So I'm looking to do the same on the rest of them. You give it a good shake first, because it does settle once you've left it standing for a while. Don't worry too much about how it's going down, because like I say, when you introduce water, you can eliminate the pattern of the brush. I mean, I shall use some of this, you know, possibly higher up on the model as well, but I'm going to start from the bottom and then work up, I think. Although there are a few other little stages that I'm going to do, so I might leap around a little bit. Another thing that I use is a little bit of tissue, well, paper towel. As you can see, it changes the look of it altogether. Right, you don't need to see that again. I'm going to go along and do the next three, and then I'll bring you back. Right, so as you can see, all I'm doing really is pasting this stuff on. It looks over the top at the minute. I've watered it down a little bit. And then when it's on, start introducing a bit more water and dragging it downwards. Still looking like it's too muddy at the minute. Right. Then when it's wet, leave it in places. The main thing is that I'm trying to make sure it doesn't look too uniform and like, you know, it's been deliberately placed. And to give the building a bit of age. And when I've wiped it all off again, a bit more water. I used to take this process a lot slower, but with so many buildings to do at once, you know, because I've got a lot more that I've let build up on me. I'm looking at ways of just speeding up the process a little bit. I mean, we're not finished yet anyway, but I just want to get the thick of it on as quickly as possible. Right. So if I just turn that round for you, you can see there's nothing too much. But if you stand that, let's move that out of the way. Let's bring this one up that I've not done anything to. And you can see the difference. This building looks like it's only just been built and now it looks weathered. But there's still more to do, but it's just got the thick of it on. And then I can go in with a bit more fine detailing afterwards. I mean, I don't want to weather this one as much as I have some of the other ones. You know, that took a lot more battle damage than these have, because these didn't get an awful lot of damage really. But nevertheless, they've got to look the part. And I think when you compare the two like that, you can see this one's got a bit of age to it. Right, I'm going to carry on doing this process to the rest of them. And when I've done all of that, I can bring them back and then we can start looking at some of the finer detail weathering to do. Now that I've got, you know, the basic, you know, grime to the buildings and I've took off that completely new look, I just want to add some, you know, smaller little details really. Like, you know, areas like this around here, you know, you'd get the moisture building up, so you'd get the kind of like a green hue of the dampness creeping up the wall. And what I'm using for this is some of my weathering powders. And I've put a tiny bit in here, and then I've added a pipette of water to it. Sometimes these things are a bit trial and error. What I might do, if it's too strong, all I'll do is I'll just dip into the water and go back over it until I get it to the how I want it. Just to show you what I mean, I'll bring this one up. Kind of zoom it in a little bit so you can hopefully see it. Right. I'll bring it close to the camera in a minute so you can see it, but obviously I just want to get it right to my eye. Whether you can see that. So I'm not going mad with it, I'm only pouring a little bit on. And I found when I let it dry a little bit, then I can come back in and smooth it to where I want it without it. But particularly on this pillar, can you see that? And if I'm not happy with how it's going up later, like I say, I can just add a little bit of water and bring that back down. I mean, that's definitely, for me now, it's going up the pillar too high. So if I come back in with a water one, look, I can take it back down again. Take that a bit lower. Same on this one over here. Just wash it down a bit. Let's bring it around to that one. Can you see that one there? And what I'm going to do, I mean, there's going to be, most of what I do with this is going to be at ground level. Although, sometimes I'll put a little bit, say here, under a drain pipe that might have been leaking behind the drain pipe, or so you might have a little bit running down from it. Sometimes good just to go around and have a look at it, around you, in the neighbourhood, buildings, old buildings in town, and just look where you can see this green, and then mimic it when you're working on your models. So what I'm going to do is, as I've done before, I'm going to go all through these with this now, and then I'll move on to the next stage. And for my next pot, I want to use some of this umbral weathering powder in its smoke. Let me just, if I can, just tip a tiny bit out onto this. That'll do. And for this you really need a totally dry brush, because once you add water to it, you can end up with, a really dark mark, and then, it's kind of undermining everything you've done. And I really want this initially just to brush onto these chimney pots. One thing you can't do is go back very easily with it. So it's far better to take your time and then build it up slowly. But that isn't to say that you can't use this smoke thing in other places as well, because I've noticed on some of the pictures of this end building on the archway that there's quite a distinctive mark up here. So I'm going to suggest a bit of that by smoothing some of it on there as well. So what I'm going to do now is build it all up on the chimney pots, probably a little bit on top of the stack itself. And I haven't got many areas like this that I wanted to replicate, but I did want to replicate that one. But there are little areas that you can use it, you know, that allow, because what you want is a variety of tones and patterns and everything, but you just got to be careful that you don't overdo it, otherwise it stops looking natural. So I'm going to go through with this one now, and then what I'm probably going to do is go round the bottoms, more on the sides than the back, with another one of my powders, which is this one, which is dark earth, and that's just to represent the splash up that they'd get from the streets, that you get round the very bottom of buildings. So I'm going to crack on with that now, and then we're slowly getting there, because I'm not going to bombard these ones with any posters, because I think this set of buildings is iconic in its own right, so it doesn't need dressing up much more than it is. So I'm not going to be sticking any posters or anything like that on here. So it's just a question of going around a few bits with some of these powders that I've got, and then I think we'll be getting there.
Right, so I went on to do a few of the final touches. I used a bit of the grime wash as well on the roofs, and just in places under the window I used a little bit of dark tone wash. Just picked out little bits here and there, put a few marks on the fronts. And that's it really. As you can see, the brown around the bases worked out quite well.
Well, they're complete. As with all projects really, you can always carry on. There's always things that you could add to these. You can do a little bit more weathering here and there. But basically, I'm just trying to build up my models with some decent looking, you know, that do the job. I'm not trying to win any prizes for, you know, the best painted house. I just want it to look realistic on the table. And quite frankly, I'm happy with these. As I said in, you know, further back, I could have put posters on these, or, you know, other little bits of decoration, but I'm not going to bother on this occasion because, as I said, I think they're an iconic set in their own right. I don't think I really need to kind of, you know, pimp them up, if you like, to any more detail. I mean, the backs, as you've seen in the final photos, are fairly bland, but they do the job. You know, they don't look brand new. You know, I'm happy to leave them at this level, and obviously I've got all my shop names on. Not that, like I said, that you can see them very well, but nevertheless, I'm pleased with them. They look the part. It's pretty much what I was hoping to achieve by the end of it. The only final thing that I haven't done yet, and that is to give it a coat of matte varnish, just to protect it a bit from all the knocks that it's probably going to get. But, you know, that's a relatively simple job. I just got to wait for a finer day than we've had, let's put it that way. And then I can give them a bit of drying time. And then I can move on to the next ones. So, anyway, I hope you found something useful. hope it's perhaps inspired you to get on some of your buildings, or think about getting some buildings for your games, to bring it a bit more to life. So thanks for joining me. If you have liked it, please consider giving me a thumbs up. Or if you're new to the channel, subscribe and click that bell, and you'll get a notification for when the next video drops. As I've said before, I'm not really, back health-wise at the moment, so I'm having to do them as and when I can, and take my time a bit more than I normally would. But at the minute, I seem to be getting to a level of at least, one every 2 weeks. Right, I'll stop rambling. Thanks again for joining me, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.